Worst quarterbacks to ever win a Super Bowl. This is from the YouTube channel Nonstop. Link will be in the description below. I'm assuming a lot of these quarterbacks will be from the past, like way in the past, just no names who were on a Pittsburgh Steelers team or were on some random dynasty and they just kind of got there. I mean, you can think of some of the quarterbacks who didn't win a Super Bowl but got there, like the Rex Grossmans of the Bears, Chris Chandler of the Falcons, like guys like that who relatively 1 year, 2 year guys. I mean, even Colin Kaepernick, who kind of journeyman, kind of was never really a true star, but somehow found themselves in a Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo is a recent example too, where, you know, if any of those guys would have won, they could be on this list. If Rex Grossman is a quarterback who won a Super Bowl, he could be on this list. But in my lifetime, like, since I've been a fan, I think Trent Dilfer, Brad Johnson, you know, like those teams where, like that Ravens team Dilfer was on, anybody could have been the quarterback. The Buccaneers team with Brad Johnson, anyone could have been the quarterback. I'm trying to think who else. Like, I remember the first Super Bowl I ever remember was 1997. It was the Packers and the Patriots. So that's kind of as far back as I go. It's hard for me to have a concept of who was good and who was bad in 1993 when I was 4 years old. So if I'm looking at it like that, yeah, I mean, because now, like I said, a lot of those quarterbacks who, and I'm hesitant, knee-jerk reaction, you want to put like Nick Foles on there, just guys who kind of had like 1 year, just a one-hit wonder situation, but I can't really compare him to every quarterback in the Super Bowl era, but those are the kind of guys that I first thought of as far as like in my time as a football fan. So we'll see who they have on here.
Times people associate Super Bowl winning quarterbacks with superstars. Who can blame them, though? Quarterback is arguably the most important position on a football team, so it makes sense that the best teams are led by some of the best quarterbacks. While that is typically the case, there are a handful of examples of a team winning a Super Bowl with a not-so-great quarterback.
Doug Williams. Okay, see, like Doug Williams is a good example where I know he won a Super Bowl, but I wasn't even alive, so I wasn't watching this team play. So for me to just throw out Doug Williams, like that wouldn't, you know, I've never watched him play beyond highlights. So
back at the helm, as the old adage goes, defense wins championships.
Okay, there you go.
They're the worst quarterbacks.
Yep, there he is, Brad Johnson,
to ever win a Super Bowl. Trent Dilfer, the 2000 Baltimore.
Yep. So the Ravens. This was kind of easy. I mean, you know. I think I would guess Brad. I mean, they've already showed Brad Johnson, but I would assume Dilfer and Johnson are locks to be on here because these were generationally good defenses with very mediocre offenses. Very mediocre offenses. So, you know, I like I said, any quarterback in the league that year probably could have made it to the Super Bowl with this Ravens defense. And if memory serves me correctly, they played the Giants, who were being quarterbacked by Kerry Collins. And the game was like 45-7. Just a complete slaughter, complete blowout.
Baltimore Ravens winning the Super Bowl proves that saying about defenses winning championships to be true. With one of the greatest defenses of all time, the Ravens took down the New York Giants 34-7 in Super Bowl 35.
Okay, yeah.
The Baltimore defense was so special that it didn't matter that the offense was led by Trent Dilfer. Heading into that season, Dilfer wasn't even supposed to be the star.
Yeah, so I was just about to say this. So I always get this confused. I always think Elvis Grbac won the Super Bowl. And maybe they'll mention it, but I'm pretty sure Elvis Grbac, man, talk about it. Like, guys, think about this. No notes, no nothing, just recalling Elvis Grbac. But I'm pretty sure Elvis Grbac was either supposed to be the starter or was the starter and got hurt. And that's why Dilfer was even playing. But I hope they talk about it because for some reason, I believe Elvis Grbac should have been the one who won the Super Bowl.
Starter for the Ravens, but he appeared in 11 regular season games and started 8 of them, while only throwing for 1,502 yards and 12 touchdowns, with 11 interceptions to go with. In the playoffs, Dilfer was nothing more than a game manager for the Ravens. In 4 games that postseason, he threw for just 590 yards.
Jeez.
That's under 150 yards per game. But Baltimore didn't need anything special out of him with their stellar defense. Dilfer's main job was to just not turn the ball over, and he only threw 1 interception in those 4 games. In Super Bowl 53, he threw for 153 yards and a
153 in a rout.
Touchdown. Safe to say, he wasn't named the game's MVP. Even though he helped his team win a ring, Dilfer was so underwhelming that the Ravens let him go before the following season.
Man, that is crazy. Like, think about that. Think about a quarterback winning the Super Bowl for a team and then them just releasing him. Just, hey, thanks. See ya. Like, that's when you know. Somebody in the comments below tell me about Elvis Grbac. Was he supposed to be the starter? Was he around at this time? But that's crazy to me that he wins the Super Bowl and they tell him, hey, man, really appreciate that, but go look for work.
Making him the only starting quarterback to ever be let go after winning a Super Bowl. To go with, it wasn't just Baltimore who wasn't impressed with his play. Nobody else in the league even viewed him as a starter, as he was signed to be Seattle's backup in 2001. After that 2000 season with the Ravens, Dilfer only started more than 10 games in a...
That's blowing my mind. So he wins the Super Bowl. The next season, he's a backup. Like, think about that. Like, let's just say, like, this year in the playoffs, like, Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers were kind of a surprise. So let's say Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers win the Super Bowl. Not that Baltimore was a surprise, but I had to pick a team that wasn't, like, a really good quarterback. Because obviously, like, Patrick Mahomes, he's not going to be someone's backup. But let's say Baker Mayfield and the Bucs win the Super Bowl. Could you imagine if going into next year, Baker Mayfield is the backup quarterback on the Rams? Like, that would just be insane. He's a Super Bowl champion. 5 months later, he's a backup.
A season once, and that was for the Cleveland Browns, who have started more quarterbacks since 1999 than Dilfer has thrown touchdowns in a single season. Dilfer was out of the league by 2008 and finished with a career rating of 70.2 and a completion percentage of just 55.5. Doug Williams.
Okay.
Similar to Dilfer.
So, same thing with Doug. Like, I will learn a lot about Doug's tenure. I just know he won a Super Bowl because I always use Doug Williams as the example of when people throw Super Bowl rings around as like a way to judge who's great and who's not. And Doug Williams has one. Trent Dilfer has one. Dan Marino has 0.
Dilfer, Williams was not the starter heading into the season that his team won the Super Bowl. In 1987, Williams started only 2 regular season games for the Washington Redskins, who lost both of those games, before leading them to a win in Super Bowl 22. Williams made history in the process, as he became the first black quarterback to start in a Super Bowl, let alone win one. He also won Super Bowl MVP, as he was on fire that game, throwing for 340 yards and 4 touchdowns in a 42-10 thrashing of the Denver Broncos.
That's just, I mean, that's the opposite of Trent Dilfer, where Williams gets thrown into the situation and he just catches lightning in a bottle and has the best game of his career, has an absolute career game in the biggest moment possible. Like that is it. I mean, that's kind of the Nick Foles thing, where it's hard for me to put him on this list if he gets to that moment and then he just shines and he wins the game. Nick Foles was the MVP. Williams was the MVP. So I think this list should probably be for more of those like game manager, journeyman people who just got put into a situation. They don't perform very well, but their team still wins. So, I mean, just kind of outside looking in, I think this might be a little unfair to put Williams in there.
If only the rest of Williams' career went like that Super Bowl game did. Over a 9-year career with the Redskins and Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Williams completed only 49.5% of his passes and threw for 100 touchdowns with 93 interceptions. In 7 career playoff games, he completed just 40.2% of his passes, while throwing more interceptions than touchdowns, with 11 picks compared to 9 touchdowns. All throughout his career, Williams struggled with accuracy, as his best completion percentage for an entire season was 56.6%. Nobody can ever erase Williams' name from the history books for his memorable performance in Super Bowl 22, but that doesn't mean he doesn't deserve to be on this list. Brad Johnson.
All right, so there you go. So Brad Johnson's situation is so similar to Trent Dilfer's. I mean, it's basically the exact same, just 2 different teams. Another blowout in the Super Bowl. The Buccaneers played the Raiders. Raiders, who Rich Gannon, Jerry Rice, Tim Brown, and the MVP of that game, fun fact, trivia, do you know it? Go down in the comments below, let me know if you do. Don't look. Don't cheat now. Don't cheat. MVP of that game, Dexter Jackson. Dexter Jackson was a safety for the Buccaneers. He won the MVP. But boom, a little fun fact for you.
Super Bowl 37. Johnson was about as average as they come, as he completed 18 of his 34 passes for 215 yards and 2 touchdowns while throwing 1 interception. His Buccaneers were victorious and became Super Bowl champions thanks to their lights-out defense rather than his play. While Johnson's 2002 season in Tampa was impressive and ended in something special, he is viewed as nothing more than an NFL journeyman who had an up-and-down career. He played for 5 different teams, which was probably a result of his inconsistency. Some years he would look great, and others not so much. For example, in 2002, he made the Pro Bowl after throwing for 22 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Johnson followed it up by throwing 26 touchdowns and 21 interceptions in 2003. It was a similar flip of the switch that was seen after he threw 24 touchdowns to 13 interceptions in 1999, before throwing 11 touchdowns and 15 picks in 2000. Johnson was never able to cement himself as a reliable, great player in the league, but his claim to fame will forever be leading his team to a Super Bowl ring. Jim Plunkett. Jim Plunkett actually managed
Again, way before me. Don't know much about Jim Plunkett as far as like the actual player.
to lead his team to Super Bowl victories 2 different times. His first came in the 1980 season when his Oakland Raiders won Super Bowl 15. During that season, Plunkett completed just 51.6%.
I mean, it's hard to say like he's an awful quarterback and doesn't deserve it if he did it twice. I mean, I don't know if the Raiders were just that good, but it's kind of hard to throw him on this list.
Of his passes, while throwing 18 touchdowns and 16 interceptions. Although he was named Super Bowl MVP that season, Plunkett received a lot of help from his defense in the game, specifically linebacker Rod Martin, who picked off the opposing quarterback 3 times. Plunkett returned to the game's biggest stage 3 years later with the Raiders, who then called Los Angeles their home. Again, Plunkett was aided by a stellar defense, as the Raiders held the Washington Redskins to just 9 points in Super Bowl 18. It also helped that Plunkett was handing the ball off to an all-time great running back in Marcus Allen. During that 1983 season, Plunkett again barely threw more touchdowns than interceptions, as he had 20 and 18 respectively. Over his 15-year NFL career, Plunkett passed for only 164 touchdowns, while throwing 198 interceptions. Not exactly the ratio
I mean, he was like a gunslinger, but not. He was not afraid to turn the ball over.
you're looking for in a quarterback. He also finished with a career record of 72 and 72, while completing only 52.5% of his passes. Jeff Hostetler.
I mean, it's crazy whenever. Oh, this is number 1, I guess. Or I guess they're not ranking them like 5 to 1, but it's crazy. Like they're saying, Plunkett's 15-year career. I mean, those numbers got him a 15-year career in the NFL. Different NFL, no doubt about it. But wow, Jeff Hostetler. Okay, so this is like mid-90s Giants. This is probably like the 94-ish area, somewhere in there. Yeah, so I mean, again, I'm 5 years old at the time, so I don't know much about Jeff Hostetler, but that would be the same time. That would be around the same time as Phil Simms quarterbacking the Giants. I don't know if Simms got hurt or if this is after Simms is gone or what. Maybe that's a situation where Hostetler had to fill in because Simms got hurt.
Jeff Hostetler almost wasn't even eligible for this list, as 2 key moments changed his life. First, in a Week 15 game during the 1990 season against the Buffalo Bills, the New York Giants starting quarterback Phil Simms went down with a broken bone in his foot, ending his season. As a result, the Giants were forced to turn to Hostetler, and all hope seemed to be lost for the G-Man. Prior to replacing Simms, Hostetler had only appeared in 2 games in his entire career.
Okay, so what they said, 1990? So 1990... So a little earlier than I thought, but 1990, Simms goes down, Hostetler has to come in.
Second moment came in the Super Bowl that season, when Scott Norwood missed one of the most...
Oh, yeah. So this is right around this is basically, this is the Bills' worst. This is the worst moment, I think, in fans' history. 4 straight Super Bowls, 4 straight losses. How is that even possible? I can't even imagine the pain that Buffalo Bills fans had to endure.
Infamous kicks in NFL history at the end of Super Bowl 25. Norwood had a chance to win the game for his Buffalo Bills with a 47-yard attempt with 8 seconds left in the game. He missed it wide right as the Giants won 20-19, making Jeff Hostetler a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Over his 15-year career, Hostetler only started all 16 games in a season 1 time, where he completed 57.8% of his passes, threw 20 touchdowns and 16 interceptions, while also fumbling 6 times for the Los Angeles Raiders in 1994. His career stats weren't that bad, as he
Look
finished
at the shoulder pads. This guy, oh my God. This guy could be like, this is the craziest shoulder pads I've ever seen. Look at these pads. I mean, he could be like a knight, like sort of Lancelot or something. Look at these things.
His career stats weren't that
I mean, they simultaneously have the neck roll, and he's also protecting his lower bicep.
bad, as he finished with a career completion percentage of 58 and threw 94 touchdowns and 71 interceptions. But Hostetler never became a franchise quarterback.
See, I mean, Hostetler his story is pretty similar to Nick Foles, where like a guy gets hurt, he steps in, he wins. Journeyman, never really is like a tried and true starter. I was also thinking that this is rare now. I was also thinking like this is something you won't see very much, just a no-name quarterback or an unsung hero starting a Super Bowl. But then I thought about it, and it's happened pretty recently, pretty consistently. Even like you can throw Brock Purdy in there. Like we don't know how good Brock Purdy is. We know he's Mr. Irrelevant. I mean, if he could end up being a journeyman, who knows, right? But then like him, like I said, Garoppolo, you throw in the Foles situation, some of the people who have lost it. Like I said, the Rex Grossman, this is going back a little bit now, but like the Rex Grossmans and the Colin Kaepernicks, and so we do tend to think of it as like really good Super Bowl, a really good quarterback versus really good quarterback. But it is crazy how often someone just kind of backs themselves into there, like the Jake Delhommes and players like that. It just depends. It just shows the luck that it takes to get to the Super Bowl. Go down to the comments below, ladies and gentlemen. Who are some of the worst quarterbacks to ever win a Super Bowl who were not listed? Fun list. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.